want to pump money in fucking people flat in the face.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Let's get started to the activities. As you know that this event is all about hot topics, so no more shit word. Let's go to our first chapter, bird's eye view of the emerging Ethereum DeFi ecosystem. And we'll from Felix from Stack Protocol to give us the first sharing of the story of DeFi. Welcome, Felix.
Who of you guys flown in today? Who got in yesterday? Who doesn't believe they're here in Osaka? That was the first. Well, I'm really honored to be with you guys here today at DEF CON's headline DeFi event. And what I'm here to talk about, as someone who cares deep. You guys didn't have your coffee yet. That hopefully has helped. As someone who cares deeply about the success of DeFi, I'm here to share two things. One, which is the story of DeFi and how it got started, and two, some of the major DeFi trends that have transpired in the past year. So why did we start the DeFi movement? It all started about a year and a half ago when we were a fledgling startup. We worked hard to build our protocol, to face regulatory challenges, and to find product market fit. And we soon became close with many of the projects in San Francisco that we were based at. We hung out with the 0x guys, Dharma, and DYDX. And what we realized was that we had a lot in common. We loved what we did. We imagined that the work that we do would help build a new financial system that was better than what existed. That it was one that was more fair, transparent, and equitable. And we realized that what we were working on was much bigger than our individual projects or what we were doing individually. But contrary to what you might think, building a DeFi startup was actually very isolated. There was no shared forum to discuss challenges and issues. There's no place to meet and encourage one another. And the irony of this was that we valued open source. We shared our white papers. But that really begged the question of, like, why is it so isolating? Why can't we be working more closely together? And that led to the genesis of what became the DeFi movement, which is an open community for decentralized finance platforms. The goals were very clear since we were already aligned. We want to spread awareness of the decentralized finance movement. We want to help facilitate solving the industry's most pressing problems. And we value stuff like open source, interoperability, collaboration, and transparency. But what wasn't clear was our name and our identity. What would this movement be called? And that was when members of the 0x team like Blake, Brendan at Dharma, and NJ from SET got together on a Telegram channel and started brainstorming. We came up with a lot of really terrible names like Open Horizon or Lattice Network. But what we landed on was DeFi. It had a really cool ring to it. It sounded like DeFi, and it meant to challenge in French. And what transpired kind of in those conversations was the first time that DeFi felt real, that people were engaging, and there was a sense of community around our mission and purpose. With kind of the name and identity settled, we started building a website. We created a Telegram channel, Reddit channel. We started hosting meetups in San Francisco. And eventually, we hosted 200 plus conferences, what we call DeFi summits. And since then, DeFi has really taken a life of its own. Today, there are DeFi events all over the world, whether it's in London, Amsterdam, Hong Kong, and today in Osaka. And we have press coverage of DeFi from major publications, and the DeFi Telegram channel is bustling with activity. And if there is a single takeaway from all of this, it's that we're all in this together. Rebuilding a 1,000-year-old financial system is not something that one person or one company can do themselves. It's something it's something where we face many challenges, and not all of us have all the answers. But what I believe and am convinced of is that the open source and collaborative nature of this community will allow us to make strides towards changing the world. So that was the story. The second thing I'm going to talk about is the major DeFi trends in 2019. So on a really high level, what we care about is looking at DeFi pulse every day and seeing this number grow, hopefully. DeFi wasn't existent 2 years ago, and now it's a $500 million phenomenon. This is what we mostly look at, but if you zoom out a little bit, there are actually other projects and other protocols outside of Ethereum and DeFi. For example, there's actually activity on EOS, and there's a surprising amount of ETH locked in Edgeware as well. In addition to that, if you take a look at the DeFi stack, it's really taking shape and isn't morphing as much anymore. Many of these projects have really solidified, and the decentralized financial applications being on top are becoming more robust. In addition to that, in terms of mainnet launches, we're seeing the second generation of protocols launch. For example, the V2 of 0x, or the V2 of DYDX or Compound. We're also seeing new primitives go live, such as asset management or insurance, which is very exciting to see. In addition to that, in terms of user count, let's be frank, we're still kind of in the tens of thousands, but it's really exciting to see when you have collaboration with centralized exchanges that you can have a whole bunch of new users start using DeFi products. For example, that bump in Maker was due to the Earn campaign. In DeFi, the majority of the use cases really is speculation and generating yield. People are margin trading or lending. On Compound, there's 150 million supply, 270 million of ETH in Maker, and there's a non-negligible amount of loans originated in DeFi in the past year, $500 million. In addition to that, in terms of liquidity models, peer-to-contract has really shown greater adoption versus peer-to-peer. Peer-to-contract is really the model where prices are set through governance or some sort of algorithm, and users just essentially set it and forget it. The peer-to-peer model is one where you do require a discrete counterparty and it requires the notion of a real layer on top. In terms of composability, we're seeing a lot happen that's resulting in really new, interesting use cases. For example, we have a flurry of activity on Maker. There's C-DAI, X-DAI, Swan-DAI, Pool-DAI, who knows what else there will be. Companies like Instadap are building protocol bridges that make the transition from one protocol, having a position in one protocol to another, pretty much seamless in the click of a button. What we've built is combined DEXs, oracles, and assets to essentially allow for automated asset management strategies. One thing in 2019 that we saw was a huge focus on liquidity. Decentralized exchanges like 0x and Kyber have focused on being able to allow for larger amounts to be filled at lower slippage, and we're seeing that there's an increase of volume that can be exchanged on-chain as well. The other thing that's really interesting is that we're seeing that there are real profit opportunities and arbitrage opportunities for market makers to start interacting with these platforms. And I think the main events that they look for are liquidations and rebalances. For example, there are $11 million of liquidations on Maker and DYDX in the past month. And in the past month, we recently did $2 million of rebalances in our moving average crossover sets in a day. And market makers are making between 60 to 150 basis points participating, and 3 to 5% on the liquidations. In addition, I think one of the key pieces that we've really worked a lot on is really the UI UX, right? Reducing the user friction, and it's being tackled from many sides. One being the smart contract wallets and the meta transactions, which allow the abstraction of concepts like gas, wrapping ETH, and private keys. We're seeing hosted wallets like Formatic and Taurus offer familiar Web 2.0-like experiences. And we're seeing a lot of activity kind of in the on-ramp space, with MoonPay, Wire, even Coinbase, and Wrap Network. So that said, what is the status of DeFi today? I think the biggest challenges that we have today are some of the following. One is the user adoption still is pretty limited. It's mostly crypto-native people using DeFi products, and there's limited success kind of going beyond that right now. The value capture mechanisms across the stack are pretty unclear. There are a lot of non-token protocols that don't have monetization yet, and it's unclear if you build a user interface how you monetize. The path to decentralization is unproven. There's very few examples of companies that are doing on-chain governance well. And I think the biggest elephant in the room is really compounding smart contract risk. For me, it's not if smart contracts will break, it's when they will. And security audits today still are really expensive, and formaldification is very much out of reach for many. So, I think this is something that we're here to discuss, and we need to ask the questions such as, how do we bring DeFi to 100K and a million users and beyond? How do we build win-win incentives for all players across the stack? How can we safely implement on-chain governance? And how can we preemptively create standards and monitor smart contract risks, before they break? So I'm really excited for what is about this event. It really exemplifies what the DeFi movement is about. And I'm excited about the sessions today where we can build an open financial system together. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you both for sharing, and let's welcome Diana. We always call her Diana and Camilla to share with us about how East defined talk with West defined.